Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John, and you're watching Super Positive Games, and this is my annual top 10 games list of the year. This time it's 2025. And I gotta tell you, this has been the most brutally difficult top 10 games of the year list that I've ever assembled. And I'm here to walk you through each and every one of those decisions because it has been a brutal time narrowing down all the games I played in 2025 into a list of just 10 of them, and then going and doing the actual listing and ordering of them all. It was extremely difficult, especially towards the very top of the list. I love making this video every single year. Per usual, with these lists every year, I start with the worst 3 games that I played in the year. I call this I like to call this sometimes the shame of the year. These are 3 games that I really had the worst time with. They are Terminal Brigade, Shadow Labyrinth, and Ultros. Terminal Brigade is a game that came out, I believe it was on PC first, and then it came over to consoles, and the game does not run decently at all. Every 30 seconds, the game freezes for a good 3 to 4 seconds, and it's basically unplayable. I don't even know what kind of game this is. It seems like some sort of multiplayer co-op, maybe like a Destiny-like type of experience, like a looter shooter with a roster of heroes. I wanted to play this game because I saw the heroes. They looked pretty cool, so it was free to play. So I decided, why not check it out? And I played no more than 10 minutes because it kept freezing every 30 seconds. They took too long. They didn't patch it and whatnot, and the problems persisted. And I really didn't give it another chance after that. I don't think I even launched into a functioning match. I think I just played the tutorial, and it was freezing, and I was like, and I just left. That's Terminal Brigade for you. It's a shame because the moments of the game that I played in the tutorial that did actually work well without freezing, the combat felt smooth and fun, but it kept freezing on me, and I was like, the game's unplayable. And so I moved on from it rather quickly. Shadow Labyrinth is a game. It's a 2D platformer vaguely based on the Pac-Man franchise. And it has some interesting ideas where some of the environment allows you to turn into the Pac-Man ball and go move along the rails and stuff and collect the little things that you eat. So some interesting things there, but the main problem with this game, and the reason why it's one of the worst 3 here, is the game's map. As a 2D Metroidvania, the game's map is truly abysmal. A map for a game like this needs to have clearly defined edges along the sides of it that let you know what parts of the world are traversable and what parts are part of the boundary of the edges of the map. And this game's map really does not communicate that to you. There are weird gaps where there shouldn't be, and it's extremely challenging to read this map because it just feels so fragmented. It's not a good map, and it was ultimately the downfall of this 2D Metroidvania for me because it's not that I got lost, it's that I got into some of the larger areas that felt a little bit overwhelming to explore even without using the map. And when I tried to use the map, which is supposed to help you in this scenario, it didn't help at all. It only made me even more confused. And plus, this game's art style really, I don't like it at all. It looks like a Flash game on cool math games or whatever. The art style is not my favorite, and it didn't help the game's case here. It was clearly one of the worst games that I played in 2025, which is a shame because I like Pac-Man, and I thought this was an interesting idea, having this kind of gloomy, gritty take on Pac-Man in a 2D Metroidvania using those cool little Pac-Man rail portions of the map, but it didn't pan out. It did not pan out. And then Ultros technically came out in 2024, but it came to Xbox in 25, and so it was eligible. And Ultros is a much prettier game than a game like Shadow Labyrinth. It's a really unique art style, kind of like this really colorful, psychedelic alien world, and it's another 2D game. But I just didn't, I don't know, despite that, the game did not grab me at all. I had like no interest. I played probably maybe an hour of it total, and it just did not grab me. It did not make me want to keep playing it. And that's a tough area to be in. It's a rare thing for me to start playing a game and immediately not want to really continue for whatever. I can't even tell you the reason why. All I know is that I really did not feel the urge to keep playing this game, despite it looking so good. It had this weird loop where it like after a certain point or after a certain part of the map that you reach, it restarts you. It's like almost like a time loop sort of scenario. So it puts you back at the starting point, but you keep the map progression and like the knowledge or abilities that you've gained or whatever. Yeah, I just couldn't get into it. I don't know. Something about it just didn't click with me at all. This game clicked with me less than any other game that I played in 2025. But those are the worst 3 games of 2025. I'll move on now to a couple shout outs. These are games that either were excruciatingly painful to cross off in my narrowing down, or I just played a ton of throughout the year, and their experiences that kind of stuck with me despite them not securing a spot on the list. They are Wanderstop, Lost in Random: The Eternal Die, and Dying Light: The Beast. All really great games that I enjoyed, and were really, really, really difficult to cross off the list. And before I get to that list, I do have 2 honorable mentions as always. Those shout-outs were in no particular order, and these 2 honorable mentions will be in no particular order as well. One of them is what you're seeing on the screen this very second in time. It's Assassin's Creed Shadows. Assassin's Creed Shadows, I am a big Assassin's Creed fan, but I will say the last half decade of Assassin's Creed games have not been have not really been like the best in my opinion. I know, Origins was my game of the year in 2017. Odyssey I didn't love nearly as much, but it still made my list in 2018 at number 10. But I wouldn't say that I loved Odyssey. I probably didn't even get like halfway. I think I got like maybe a third of the way through that game, and I never looked back. I might have to revisit that at some point in my future. And then Valhalla in 2020 was a big step back because it just got so massive and so bloated, and just I think I dumped 80 hours into that game and didn't sniff the ending still. So it's just that game was way too big, way too long. And Mirage in 2023 was a nice, smaller experience, a nice return to form. I did enjoy that. But now here in Shadows, in feudal Japan, I can say that I really enjoy an RPG Assassin's Creed Shadows game once again. Maybe not to the extent that I loved Assassin's Creed Origins, but Shadows, I think, is probably my favorite Assassin's Creed game since Origins. I really liked the dual protagonist system. I think it's really smart because of the direction that the franchise has gone the past half decade, where you'd have, the classic Assassin's Creed experience is stealth focused, but the more recent RPG games introduced a more open combat experience. And that's what Yasuke is here for. He's like the big brute who's going to smash people to bits. And you still have Naoe, who's the shinobi assassin here in Shadows, who still provides a incredible stealth experience. And the main reason that I think this Assassin's Creed Shadows game spoke to me was the exploration and the world of Japan, and just exploring these areas, exploring these shrines and temples and ruins and towns, and port cities, and I really fell in love with the world of this Assassin's Creed game, and I think it's the strongest part of it. I think the combat is great, like I said, having those two types of options. I think the stealth is great, and I like the different tools that now I has, and being able to like, go climb up onto like this into like a ceiling of a building and stay there. And the way these kind of forts are laid out is really, the bush placements in a lot of these places and the places to hide while you scout out where the guards are. And I just love that kind of Assassin's Creed stealth. It took me a little bit to get back used to, like the first couple opening hours of the game playing as Naue in stealth. It took me a while to really get a hold of things, because I'm somebody who I feel like I need to know the position of every enemy in my vicinity, and that's not always possible in these types of games. You don't always know who's going to be like around the corner, and there's another game on this list where that's the case. Another stealth game higher actually on the list. But yeah, Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think narratively this game does struggle. The relationship between Yasuke and Naue was not a strength. I think that these two characters almost never ever had any type of disagreement, except for when they first meet, because they obviously they come from different forces in the world, where Naue is this part of the shinobi clan, and Yasuke is part of the invading forces of the Nobunaga family or army that comes into Naue's town of Iga and kind of destroys everything. And when they first meet, there's a lot of tension there because of that. But throughout the rest of the game, after they become allies and they decide to work together, they never have another disagreement ever again about anything. And so I think that was not great. You want to see a little bit more between them in terms of like, what's their standing with each other in terms of how are they feeling after, destroying each other's home or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's not enough there between them. And I just think overall, this game, for as much as I loved the different regions and exploring them and the exploration system, I had it set to where instead of giving me a waypoint on the map, the game gives me I think because you can do the waypoint option. I forgot what these. I think there's adventure mode or guided mode or whatever. But I chose the option where instead of getting a waypoint, it gives me the region. It gives me a couple of nearby locations, like it's south. The place you want or the person you want to find is southwest of so and so shrine, and you actually have to use the world map, zoom in, find the direction of whatever shrine you're looking for, and then actually go and explore and find it yourself. I loved that. It does so much to immerse me. It did so much to immerse me into the world and really get me looking at the world and noting where things are. This shrine's over here, so I have to go south of it, but there's a small island. How do I get across? I just loved traversing this world, but as much as I love the different regions, it does the exact same thing as Valhalla did, where unfortunately, from a narrative perspective, each region has its own story with its own characters that are pretty much exclusive to that region. And once you complete that region's main quest line, you never see those characters again. That's it. And so you just move on to the next region, you meet the new characters, you figure out what the new problem is for these people, and you go and solve it, and then you leave them behind again. And like they never accumulate, you never see these characters again in this main story. And that's a shame, because I like a story where you do see characters come up and remain relevant and important. And this is just it's exactly the Valhalla thing, and I think Mirage did this as well, where it's just like, yeah, this is this region's characters, and you'll never see them again. You're just gonna leave them behind and go on to the next set of characters in the next region. I don't love that that type of storytelling in these recent Assassin's Creed games. In fact, I think it's a very weak way to tell a story. Although I do like the kind of assassination board style of the quest, how they're laid out in that tab, the actual how they're told and the structure of the main story didn't work for me. Despite having an incredibly strong opening, I think there's a scene, and this is a spoiler here, where Naoe's father perishes, and there's this band of this order, which is who you're going to be hunting down throughout the entire rest of the game as like the main targets of the narrative. They all line up and it's like an execution. And this is at like the opening hour of the game, and the way the music this game has incredible music, very like sci-fi twist to it that I was not expecting from a game like this at all. But that scene has a lot of that sci-fi-ish sound, and I think that was probably the best scene of the game. I just really loved exploring these cities. Kyoto, right in the middle of the map, is incredible. Oh my god, Kyoto is so incredible. And the seasons in this game, going from winter or summer and spring to fall with the leaves, and then winter with the snow. This world is beautiful. And Kyoto, how that's set up, thinking about how this is like the main city in the game, but like there's so many like farm areas like on the outskirts, and then the winter season, it like snows. It's beautiful, a beautiful game world, and I just wish we had control over which season it is. Because if I had control over that, I leave it in winter 90% of the time. And when it rained in this game, like if it was like during springtime or summertime, the downpour rain in this game is sensational. I think early in the game I visited a shrine close to Osaka, and it was like green, and when it started raining, there was like this green haze to it, this dark green, moody haze. It was still during the daytime, but it was just downpouring. It was just that I think I took a screenshot on it on Xbox. It was just that's a moment, just an environmental moment that just stuck out to me so much, and it gripped me. I was like, wow, this weather system in this game is gorgeous. And that matters in creating a world that I want to explore and exist in for hours and hours on end. I will say, going back to the storytelling in this game, I feel like the cinematics team on this game really knew what they were doing, and that's evident in some earlier cutscenes with some characters that you meet early on, like around Osaka, the Osaka region. The cinematics team really is on fire here. It's just that the narrative, the actual written narrative of what's going on and these characters are just it's not strong enough to meet that. And so what happens is you have incredible cutscenes that are shot really well and are edited really well with incredible music behind them, but you're just like, they feel kind of empty, because it's just like, man, I'm not really feeling much for these characters that I just met and I'll never meet again. You know? So yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Shadows. Why don't I move on to my second and final honorable mention, which is Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. This is from Don't Nod, the former Life is Strange studio, and now that they've moved on from Life is Strange, Deck 9 is handling that franchise from here on out. Don't Nod has begun their own new narrative adventure, hopefully franchise, because I did love Lost Records. I'd love to see a follow-up here. And it's Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. You follow 4 high school teenage girls in the 1990s during a summer where they all meet, and they kind of create like this band, this punk rock band. And this game, I really did love how this game told its story, where much of the game is told in the 90s, as they're all kind of the teenage summer vibes of the 1990s. But then the game frequently brings you to current day or present day, where they're all grown up. They've grown apart, basically. After the events of that summer, they grew apart. They went on to live their lives. Some of them got married, some of them didn't, some of them have careers, and they come to meet in present day in this bar, and it's in first person, which I don't think Don't Nod quite has nailed the first person exploring this bar and this kind of small indoor area, and having the dialogue choices pop up in first person felt a little janky from a technical perspective. I'm not sure Don't Nod quite has that down yet. They're more of a third person studio where that's their strength, I feel. And obviously the 1990s portion of the game is all in third person, but the present day is in first person. You play as Swan, is the one protagonist, and then there's Nora, there's Autumn, and then there's Kat, who is really where the narrative focuses around. And Kat is probably one of the best characters in any video game this year. She has an incredible anger that she carries with her. Despite, out of the four of them, she looks like the most like innocent, so to speak, but she is the most angry one of them, and there's a reason for that, and you learn that reason. This game is split into two parts, tape 1 and tape 2, and at the end of tape 2, or rather at the end of the first tape, right at the midway point of the game, there's a huge climactic moment where this band gets together and they do their first show outside the diner, and it's absolute chaos. It's madness for the wrong reasons in the story. And Kat has pretty much like a breakdown where she kind of like faints, and her family members are there who she hates. She hates her whole family, but her sister, her older sister, and her shitty boyfriend is there to like bring her to like the hospital because there's something going on. And then the rest of the characters learn about what is happening with her, and she becomes like the soul of the game at that point. And man, like what a story. I do think that the first tape is the strongest. That moment at the end of the first tape that I just described is the strongest part of the game. And tape 2, which came out a couple months later, or a month or two later, kind of like an episodic type of release. Tape 2 was not as strong. I think the first half of the game is the strongest. When the girls are all like meeting for the first time, and they meet outside of this video store, this Blockbuster like video store, and you know, they stay there late at night, and there's like this playground down where like the asshole boyfriend of Kat's sister threw the keys of someone's car that they needed, and they go searching in this playground down by the video store, and it's like nighttime at this point, and the sky is dark purple. And it's so surreal. And I'm looking at the sky, and it's like, what? Like, this game uses the 1990s aesthetic in such an incredible way, because they didn't have to turn the sky just dark purple, and they did for this moment here, where they're all just still trying to, getting to know each other. They just met earlier that day, and they're still like kind of quipping at each other and joking around with each other. And the sky is just deep, this dark purple. And it's such a surreal thing. Like, that's not a real sky that you would see anywhere like in the world, I don't think. But it's happening here, and it's like it's this really nice, almost like a Lynchian, David Lynch style sky there. It's just like really, really cool moment there early in the game. And yeah, I really liked these characters and how they grow together. They become best friends, and then they grow apart. And then there's another moment in the woods. They have this like hideout cabin in the woods that they kind of decorate. It's their like spot, becomes like their hangout spot. And yeah, I just like the surrealist elements in this narrative with the sky, but more importantly, this like giant hole in the ground. There's another spoiler. A giant hole in the ground opens up, and it's this kind of Alice in Wonderland type of thing. Like, do they jump in? Do they not? I don't know. I'm not going to say too much more about that, but yeah, just like an excellent kind of supernatural story with excellent characters. And yeah, that's Lost Records Bloom and Rage. I really, really enjoyed it, but I think it was the last game that I eliminated before I had my top 10. It was so hard to cut this from the list, but it had to be done because I have 10 games that I'm about to get into right now, starting with number 10, South of Midnight. South of Midnight is incredibly such my type of game. First of all, the studio behind it, Compulsion Games, is Xbox first party studio. They did Contrast in 2013, then they did We Happy Few, which is the game that caught my eye. Came out 1.0 in 2018, and that the visual style of that game like really spoke to me. And now, all these years later, they have their third game, South of Midnight, which is completely different from those two games. It focuses on the story of Hazel Flood in the kind of south of America, this kind of Louisiana bayou area. And this game felt like it was made, like, for me, in terms of the art style, this kind of stop motion aesthetic, this claymation look to it, where like the frames are they slow down the frames to have this stop motion effect on it. I absolutely adore that kind of thing. I adore the kind of like New Orleans, Louisiana, bayou type of environment. I love that setting in video games. I feel like we don't get enough of it. I think we got a little bit of that in Red Dead Redemption 2. We got some of that in Mafia 3. We got some of that in Desperados 3. But a game in that setting with this art style and this music, unbelievable. And not to mention, this is like an Xbox 360 style character action game in the sense that it's just a linear action adventure game with incredible traversal, incredible animation. Hazel Flood, the way she moves as she's doing like her grapple moves across like trees and floating with like her kind of hang glider thing across like different gaps and stuff. She could also wall run, like really just fun, smooth movement in South of Midnight. And I mentioned the music in this game. Where the music really shines is the boss fights. There are some incredible boss fights. I'll say the combat in this game is very simple. There's, not much going on. It's not like you can make builds or anything. It's not an RPG in that sense. It's just an action game, and there are, light attack, heavy attack, push and pull abilities in combat. There's this little thing called Crouton, this little kind of wool doll that she could control, and can control it in like these little small cavern areas in exploration, but she could also bring it in during combat to do different moves and stuff. But the boss fights are also pretty simple. They have their one shtick where this is like the pattern of attacks that it does, and this is how you avoid them, and this is your window to get your damage in. But the music during those boss fights makes them incredible. If it weren't for the music, those boss fights wouldn't be as great. This music in this game is absolutely stunning, and the way the music continues as you explore, the music has vocals, and you hear those vocals even when you're just exploring the environments and moving through the levels. This game sings at you. It feels like almost constantly, and I love that. And the story, I thought that the story was very strong. I liked the element of having so many different types or so many different characters that are part of this narrative, where Hazel's trying to find her mother who in the opening moments of the game got swept away in a kind of hurricane with the house. The house was on kind of stilts, and this water from a hurricane came in and washed the house away with her mother in it, and she's off trying to find her mother in this kind of Alice in Wonderland type of surreal landscape, where she comes into contact with like these kind of spiritual beings from the past. She comes into contact with stories from different characters and their kind of tragic stories. I liked how like there's this I think Benji is one of the characters. He's like stuck in a tree because his brother kind of tricked him and I forgot exactly what how the story went, but he tricked him into staying in the tree hollow thing, and he became the tree, and he was locked in there, and he just became the giant tree, and how it kind of moves on from that, where you solve that problem for Benji, and you move on to the next sort of monster or being that you're going to come in contact with, but then there's this catfish that you ride on as part of the story. I forgot his name, but Hazel kind of rides on top of him, this giant catfish, through the bayou as they move on from area to area, encountering these mystical, magical beings. And I just love the amount of characters that are part of Hazel's journey as she goes and she climbs this giant mountain to go and track down Hug and Molly, who's this spider-like lady in the mountains. And what an incredible game. Like I said, just like the linear level design is spectacular. There aren't really any like open areas. It's all very, very linear. There are some side areas that might have a small collectible, but they bring you right back to the main path. And I just loved climbing on the rocks and shimmying across ledges, and the traversal, like I said, was amazing. And this environmental work is stunning. All right, little like huts, little dock huts in the bayou with like a little boat attached, and there's one sequence of the game where you're in like a flatter marsh area, and there are these giant like characters on the horizon, like this I forgot what Paul Bunyan type of like giant characters that are in like the South that you see, like there's 50-foot cowboy characters and whatnot, but some of that in there. I love the outfit changes. Hazel kind of starts off in this kind of regular outfit, and then midway through the game she gets this gothic, like black and white, lacy kind of cool badass outfit. And then I just think that this game's music and art style are so unique, and it felt like this game was made for me in terms of its design, its art style, and how it uses its incredible music. Moving on now to number 9. That's Silent Hill F. Previously to this year, prior to this year, rather, I have never played a Silent Hill game. Silent Hill F is one of the first games that one of the first Silent Hill games that I've ever played. There's more on that later. Silent Hill F is an incredible journey. It is a gorgeous game that's set in this kind of I believe 1960s Japan, this kind of little town, and it's just beautiful. And I really liked how about half of the game is spent in this mystical shrine world that's kind of disconnected from reality. The thing about Silent Hill games that I've learned is that I don't know what reality is anymore, because I look at something like the Resident Evil franchise, and that's pretty grounded, I feel, in like it's like this is the reality. This is reality. There is a zombie outbreak. This is chaos. But this is like the real reality world. Silent Hill, and I compare these two franchises because they're very similar in gameplay. There are key differences, but they're similar. Silent Hill is different in that the real world might not be the real world. The real world that you think the real world is in these games likely is not real. Despite there being these kind of alternate realities that the game presents to you. Like in Silent Hill F, the Shrine World, where the protagonist Hinako, this kind of high school girl, meets this fox guy, this guy in a fox mask, and who is this guy? And the mystery that surrounds this game is impeccable. I think this is a very incredibly strong story, and I loved The first half of it, where Hinako is kind of at odds with her high school friends, where there's this drama. There's this kind of romantic drama where Hinako has this best friend Shu, who they're just like platonic friends, but there's this other member of the friend group, Rinko, who is jealous of Hinako because she thinks Hinako and Shu are secretly dating, and there's this whole jealousy arc between the two of them that lasts the entire first half of the game, and I just think that that was spectacular. And then the game shifts, in the spirit world. This is a spoiler. Hinako kind of kills off the manifestations of her three friends, and then the game promptly moves on. You never really hear about them again. They don't show up. It's now becomes about her family and her parents and the problems that she has with her family, which are devastating. I will say that there was one moment in this game that really clicked with me. It's in the real world town. On the outskirts, there's this kind of schoolhouse that you visit as part of you're trying to get to Shu's house. That's like kind of deeper in the woods. But the way this game transitions from the town to the kind of outskirts woodsy areas is beautiful, by the way. Like, the environment work here is gorgeous, and the way that progresses, and now you're in now it's getting more woodsy, and but there's still some like town buildings here. But getting to that that kind of schoolhouse, that empty abandoned schoolhouse just outside of town, that's where this game clicked with me in terms of exploration, exploring the different rooms, and just the horror. This is a scary game. These Silent Hill games, it's the atmosphere that just feels, there's something about it that just feels oppressive. I think about the Resident Evil games, none of them really are that scary. I would say Resident Evil 7 Biohazard probably is the scariest of the ones that I played. Probably scarier than 2, 3, and 4 Remake. Definitely than 4 Remake. But then Resident Evil Village is not as scary as 7 Biohazard. I think the Silent Hill F is even more scary tonally than 7 Biohazard. I think the Resident Evil games, there's a certain kind of camp and a level of unseriousness to them a little bit. Silent Hill has none of that. It's all front to back, thick, oppressive, scary horror atmosphere, day or night, and it's beautiful. There is one moment in this game's narrative that I'm about to spoil right now. So if you have not played this game, skip ahead to somewhere down the line. But Hinako goes through a transformation that sees in the spirit world, facilitated by this white fox mask figure. He leads her through this ritual that transforms her body, where she cuts her arm off at the shoulder. She does it. He doesn't do it for her. He makes her do it. She cuts her arm off at the shoulder and attaches a wolf arm. And then later on, they brand her back, and then finally they cut off her eyes and sew on a fox mask to her face. And I just feel that first of all, watching these sequences were some of the most visceral moments in any game narrative this year that I've experienced. Truly horrifying, and just horrific to watch. And I really admire the commitment that this game's narrative has to, okay, we're in the spirit world. We are going to transform this character in a way that I don't think I've ever really seen happen in a video game before. A transformation of that scale, where we're just going to alter your body and attach a wolf arm to your arm. and to have that now change the combat. Because that's the other thing. Silent Hill F's combat is pretty simple. It's melee focused. So you're finding like different pipes and hammers and you swing them and you hit the enemies. And there's this mechanic where you could there's this focus mechanic where you could focus, and it allows you to counter if you hit it in the right timing. It's hard to explain that mechanic, but it's all just like in the real world, quotes. It's all just pipes and stuff. But when you get the wolf arm in the spirit world, you use that wolf arm to eviscerate your foes, and it's really, really cool. Like a really fucking really cool thing to have to go through this, see Hinako go through this transformation and use that wolf arm as her weapon, and to commit to that for the rest of the game in that spirit world. I admire that from Silent Hill F. I really do. It's an incredible thing to see a game kind of commit narratively to something like that, and then follow through in the gameplay and the combat throughout the rest of the game, at least in that world, because you do pop in and out of the spirit world and the real world. And in the real world, after that point, you still use, obviously she still has her arm, so you still use the regular pipes and hammers, weapons, and all that. But yeah, I just love Silent Hill F's narrative and its exploration. I loved how linear it is. It's a very, very linear game. Loved the narrative as well. Obviously, later on in the game, where you kind of come full circle to, and there are some reveals of what certain beings are and who they are, and I like some of those reveals and coming face to face with an alternate version of Hinako and where that goes. I just think this game environmentally is beautiful, and the exploration in it is great, especially in that schoolhouse section. And so that is Silent Hill F. It's my number 9. Let me now move on to my number 8, which is a little game called Ludo. It's an indie horror game, kind of like a walking simulator. There's no combat. There's not much in the way of gameplay, so to speak. There are some puzzles, but this is a first-person narrative horror experience. And I really, it's a hard game to really get a grasp on narratively, because it's so ambiguous, it's so surreal, and I still to this day don't really know exactly what to make of the story after the credits roll. However, this experience as a first-person horror narrative of walking through this house, there's this kind of time loop scenario where you can't like escape your house. You wake up in the bathroom and you go through the house and you go down the stairs, you get the keys out of the bowl and you go to the door, but then something else happens and you wake up in the bathroom again and you go and try and get out again. So there's like this kind of loop situation happening early on in the game, and then the game there are a couple chapters, but the game gets into these I think you go into the basement of the house, and then there's like you enter this kind of surreal situation where nothing makes sense anymore, and the kind of walls of the house shift, not in real time, but they're different, and the layout is different, and there are these kind of figures in these white sheets, these kind of ghost figures that are just standing around in each corner randomly in the house, and they're just there, and they're really creepy. And I just really fell in love with the veranda style like structure of this house and how it twists, where the walls are now infinite and they go up into the darkness forever, and there's like these tile floors, and there's this one room in this game that just stuck with me. There's this very, very small room with a wooden door with window panels, and the hallway outside of it is very, very dimly lit, and inside it's very bright. There's no windows in this room. It's just extremely bright. You would think there's a window in it, but it's just really bright in there. And then there's the inside of the room, there's like this little model house, and there's this puzzle that you have to interact with in there that you have to unlock. And then there's a safe in the wall, but like it's like this kind of vineyard type of look. The Spanish tile type of like Spanish roof tile, terracotta, I think it's called, something like that. That kind of look to it. It's just beautiful looking room. And that room just stuck with me for some reason. I don't know. And then this game, I'm just kind of rambling about it because it's really hard to talk about a game like this succinctly because it's just so surreal. There's like the game continues and you keep encountering like there are some of these. I think there are 5 of them. These kind of coin collectibles hidden throughout the game that I came across that are just these large pixelated golden video game coins that are like straight out of the Super Mario universe, and they're just floating in the darkness, bright lit up golden, but they're floating in the darkness, just like bouncing up and down. And then you go and collect them, and there's like this arcadey sound to it, just in the middle of this horror game. And I just love this game. Reminded me a lot of a game from 2024 called Indica. It's just like surreal, like video game elements, old school classic video game elements in this totally photorealistic, dark, grim, gritty horror environment. There's just something about that surreal look to it that I fell in love with. These little coin collectibles, and there's only like 5 of them. But that stood out to me as well. And then this game just gets more and more unhinged as you progress. It's not a very long game, but as you keep going, it's a linear game with some small puzzles along the way. But like the game does this thing where it starts breaking down in the sense that the game becomes extremely buggy on purpose for a narrative purpose, where you start to see like developer tools in the environment, like these kind of red, blue, and green arrows, or these kind of illuminated door frames that have text on it that are like developer notes that like tell you like when you walk through this door frame, lights on, and you would see the text floating in midair that say lights on. And it's just stuff like that just keeps happening. It's like a snowball effect. You start to notice these things, and then it just gets crazy where you're just in almost like a kind of developer. You're in like the game engine tool. And it's like you're exploring this environment that has all this developer text and notes, and it's all on purpose. And the game like glitches, and it's lagging, and there you have walls that are like flashing in and out of existence as if it's like a real bug, but it is a bug, but it's a on purpose bug. Like this game does that, and I can't remember a game that really goes this far with the purposeful bug thing. And I think this game does it better than anything else. And the places this game takes you is unbelievable. There is also this narrator that I completely forgot about. There's this narrator in this game, and early on in the game, they seem like this neutral narrator, but things start happening to where the narrator gets a little more aggressive, to where maybe the narrator has a stake in the game somehow, or it has something to do with the story here or the characters, and that kind of slow, mysterious reveal was creepy, and the game also classically, of course, a game like this would do this, but it does the whole fake out credits thing. Which I love when games do that. It's fun, it's cool, and a game like this, of course, it would do that. But yeah, Ludo, gorgeous game, photorealistic visuals are incredible, and just where this game takes you on this journey is it just stuck with me. And you know, when I started to make this list, it wasn't a game that like I thought would make the list throughout the year, because I played it in over the summer, I think June or July, and I kind of forgot about it, and I didn't really think it would make the list. But when I sat down to make this list a couple weeks ago, I looked at Ludo. I was like, man, that was an experience, and it made it at number 8. So congratulations, Ludo, on making the list. Allow me now to move on to number 7, which is Mafia: The Old Country. I love the Mafia franchise a lot, and I think Mafia: The Old Country might just be, I know this is going to sound insane, might just be my favorite one. I loved Mafia 2. I didn't love Mafia 3 that much, but I really did enjoy Mafia Definitive Edition, the remake of the first game in 2020. But I think Mafia: The Old Country might just be my favorite. And not only might that be the case because of its setting, which is completely different than any of the three prior Mafia games. It's set in early 1900s Sicily, in the farmlands and the vineyards, the rolling hills of 1900 Sicily. I mean, that has a lot to do with it. But I think this also might have the strongest story of any of the three of the prior three Mafia games. You play as Enzo, this kind of sulfur mine worker, and you get thrown in with the Teresi crime family. You eat the mozzarella, okay? And it's this story of how Enzo kind of rises the ranks. And I love how every Mafia game has like the core group of characters. In this one, you have Enzo, you have Luca, which is Don Teresi's right-hand man. And you also have Cesare, who is kind of the Don's nephew, I believe. Who's like a actual blood family member of the Don himself, who is kind of like a lieutenant. He's under Luca. And so, but then when Enzo comes in, Enzo's kind of like bottom rung. But throughout the game, it's kind of spoilery. It's the story of how Enzo kind of rises the ranks a little bit. The rivalry between him and Cesare, and the jealousy that forms between them, and how some of these characters aren't sticking around long term. And Enzo kind of moves up and later in the game becomes Don Teresi's right-hand man himself. Okay? And I love a Mafia story like that, of seeing this character, a lowly character, come in and seeing him kind of become more and more important over the course of the game as events happen, as people leave the picture for one way or another. And I just love that. I also love Leo, who is a prominent character from Mafia 2, Leo Galante, I believe his last name is. Because this game being a kind of prequel to all the other three Mafia games, you do see some familiar names, some familiar characters, Leo Galante being the more prominent one, where he's like one of the Mafia 2 big characters. But here he is the young version of himself in Sicily, and he's not really technically part of the family, but he is kind of like a really, really close associate. And I really liked Leo's kind of role here, where he wasn't like Enzo and Luca and Cesare in terms of he is in the ranks. He's outside of the ranks, but he hangs out with them and does things with them as if he is one of them. And I just love that about Leo, and how he's like one of the trusted ones that the family trusts dearly. And I love that kind of character in a Mafia story. This is also a romance story in the way that I don't think any of the three other Mafia games were. Enzo meets Isabella, who is the Mafia Don's daughter. He's Don Teresi's daughter, and Enzo and Isabella do fall in love. This is a lovebird fable. And obviously, Don Teresi would not be happy. He would not be a happy man if he found out about Enzo and Isabella, becoming a couple behind his back. And there's drama. There's a lot of drama, and I'm going to get into some spoiler territory, to put it bluntly. So this is major, heavy spoilers here. Please, if you have not played this game, turn back or skip forward, do whatever you need to do. Avoid this now, okay? Huge spoiler warning. This is spoilers. I'm putting it on red on the screen. Spoilers, stay back, stay away. Enzo, right late in the game, Enzo and Isabella want to flee, and they do attempt to flee Sicily and get to America together. I believe Isabella might also be early pregnant. She might be pregnant at this time as well, with Enzo's child. And this is at the point late in the game when the Teresi crime family, the Teresi family is starting to fall apart. Things are starting to crumble. And what I love about this game, perhaps the most, is unlike the 3 Mafia games before it, this game uses metaphor to a incredible extent. Where as the family is crumbling to the ground, people are getting killed, people are running away, people are trying to flee. It's chaos. Okay, the family itself is taking a darker turn into more violence as well. Don Teresi's scary side is starting to come out, and throughout the game there are these tremors on in the hills of Sicily. Right when you start the game is a tremor, and throughout periodically every like chapter or whatever, it'll tremor during like the title card of the chapter or whatever, just to remind players, hey, there's tremors here, tremori. As the family is falling apart, a local volcano is now beginning to erupt in the landscape. And there's this volcano that just starts spewing rocks, and you could see the smoke towering as the chaos and the drama unfolds in the car chases and trying to flee. You could see this fucking volcano with the smoke coming out, and it is the perfect metaphor for this family falling apart. It's unbelievable. And, you know, there is a face-off at the end of this game with Enzo and two other characters, very, very extremely important characters. Enzo faces off against them. And they're characters that Enzo has known for a long time throughout this story. But it's coming to blows between them finally. And the volcano being in the backdrop with the smoke and the tremors actively going on. I believe they're actively going on during some of these conflicts. And the fireballs that are raining down from the heavens from this volcano, right? Destroying buildings and vineyards, and it is just hell on earth unfolding as the Teresi family is dying. And I just it's just a beautiful narrative, and the way that volcano is used throughout the game as a metaphorical device is just brilliant. No other Mafia game has done anything like that, largely because they can't really do anything on that scale because those are stories embedded in cities. You can't really have any kind of natural phenomena like a volcano erupting in Chicago, in Lost Heaven, or New Bordeaux, right? I mean, you could probably do a hurricane in New Bordeaux, but that's besides the point. I don't know if that happened. That could have happened in Mafia 3. I didn't beat Mafia 3. Yeah, like the Mafia the Old Country. I will say, riding on horseback in a Mafia game is really fucking cool, and I wish that the family stuck with that as the main mode of transportation, because about like a third of the way into the game, you start getting more and more into the cars, and it's really just cars from there on out. But early in the game, it's horseback, and it's fucking awesome. I liked how this game's stealth or combat is very, very simple. It's just third person cover shooting, simple weapons. Stealth is very simple but well designed. I liked going through the different areas and camps, and I just wish there was a little bit more stealth areas to do. But stealth is well designed, and these new knife fights are really fun as well. I think they're very, very simple. You dodge to the right. There's like a counter ability. I believe there might also be a stamina bar, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, but yeah, I think the knife fights are fun and a cool wrinkle to add to a Mafia game at this point. I think that was well done. And like I said, just the setting, the narrative, Enzo's story, what happens with Enzo at the very end of the game. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was actually shocked and stunned at the how things turned out. I couldn't believe it. And this is probably my favorite Mafia game of all time. Mafia the Old Country, but I need to move on now to my number 6 game. That's Blueprints. Blueprints is one of the most unique puzzle games that I might have ever played. It's a puzzle roguelike where you are going through, you start in this foyer, and you're trying to get to room 46? Yeah, room 46, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on screen. It's been a little bit since I played this, but you're going through, and each door, you kind of choose which room you want to build, and each room has different items you could grab, resources, different directions that you could go, and you're trying to get north to that mysterious room. And I was really hooked on this game. I couldn't stop playing it. I have not beaten this game. This is the only game on this list that I have not beaten. It's a very, very difficult game. I will say Blueprints, like, I was having the issue of there's a lot of information to acquire as you explore these rooms for the first time, and I was running into the problem where I have all this information, I'm taking note of all these things, but there's nowhere to put this information. There's nowhere to enter it into a safe or a door or something, and there are safes in this game that do pop up eventually that you find and you come across and you discover. But it's just a lot of information and not many places to put it, nothing to do with it. And so it's kind of like a puzzle in itself to figure out, okay, I have info. Where do I put this? Where do I go to cash in on the information that I found, on the kind of writing on the wall that I found, or this note that I found that mentions this? Where do I go to do that? So that's part of it. And I could not get enough of this game. I loved the art style. I think it's a gorgeous looking game. And one of the things that I love the most about it is the music. This game has a really eerie feel to it, a kind of creepy feel to it, so to speak. And a lot of that has to do with the music. Very, very like creepy tone to its music. And I don't know, there's something about that music that spoke to me in a really weird way that like made this game feel really eerie as you're exploring these rooms and you don't know what you're really going to find and what's this big mystery that I'm trying to unfold. I loved that kind of the air of mystery about this game that the music helps provide. You just keep going and you collect, figuring out when to spend coins on different items that you might want, like a metal detector or a shovel, or going out, you unlock like this outside shed room after a certain point in the game, and after opening the garage on the left side of the manor, you unlock this path that lets you now every run that you do, you can go and open that door in the shed, and it's like a whole unique, I think there are 8 unique rooms in that shed thing that you could open every day, and you choose one of them and you get certain effects and stuff. But yeah, I just love the gamification, the roguelikeness of this puzzle game. There's really nothing like it. There's not been a game like this. I know it fuses elements of prior genres, but like walking simulators, first-person puzzle games, and of course roguelikes, it infuses those things into something that's never been made before, and something I've never experienced before in my life, and something that hooked me so much. I loved keeping track of how many steps you have. Every time you walk through a door frame, you lose one of your steps. And there are ways to regain those steps. You could find food. There's the dining room that after you reach the 8th row in the house, you could go and eat a meal that gives you like 25 steps, bonus steps, and you could refill your steps that way. And I just loved the kind of the UI in this game is beautiful, and I loved the little photos, those square little images of each room, those top-down images, those floor plans of each little square room. They're just so neat. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just seeing each one of them and seeing you could pull up the map of your current manor and how it looks, and just seeing each one of them. I don't know, there's something to it, that little smallness of it. I really liked that element of the UI, and seeing these rooms from like that top-down perspective in those little squares was really neat. And Yeah, narratively, this game is very thin narratively. There's not really many there are cutscenes. They're very, very few. I didn't get I got to day probably 70 or 80, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check it. It's been a while, but I made a lot of progress. It's a game that does not hold your hand. You just have to go and experience it and find things. So there's not really like a linear progression to it for the most part. There are these red letters that I think you need to find. There's the foundation part of the house that you have to go to, and obviously the antechamber at the top of the floor plan is like the ultimate goal. And there's like these underground caverns and secret pathways underground under the house that you have to traverse and explore. And this game, like every one of these days, every new day in this game, there's this level of like excitement and eagerness that I had every single time of like, what am I going to find this time? How far into this house am I going to get this time? What new rooms am I going to discover? It was always so exciting to discover a new type of room. And what this room does, how it looks, what kind of notes might be hidden in it when I finally enter it and look around in it. And Blueprints is a hell of a game. One of my favorite games of 2025 for sure. It hooked me so hard. I love Blueprints, and I'm gonna want to beat it at some point eventually. But I could have looked up guides and stuff, but I wanted to do it my way. And that's a way that saw me not beat it in 2025, which is fine. Not the first unbeaten game that's made one of my lists. But yeah, Blueprints, number 6. Now let me move on to the top 5. Number 5 is Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Now, this is not technically my first Metal Gear Solid experience. All the way back in 2014 or 15 is when I tried Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. I only played like an hour, if that, of both of those games, barely scratched the surface of them. And I don't know why I moved on from them. Maybe they were too advanced. I was 10 years younger than I am now, and I didn't really grasp what those games were gameplay-wise. So this isn't technically my first Metal Gear Solid experience, but it really is my first full Metal Gear Solid experience. And in that, my first Hideo Kojima experience as well. I've never played any of the Death Stranding games. I know Kojima was not involved in this remake, but it is his thumbprint on this. He is the creator of this game originally, and so it's still a Kojima game in that respect. And I was blown the fuck away from this game. So first of all, I'm going to talk about it in terms of story and then in terms of gameplay. I'm going to start with gameplay. This is probably the most hardcore stealth game I've ever played. It's very difficult. I love stealth games. I've played all manner of stealth games. I just talked about Assassin's Creed. I love isometric stealth games like Desperados 3, Shadow Gambit. Shout out Me Games, rest in peace. I love the Dishonored franchise so much. Like, I love stealth games. And this is probably the most difficult stealth game that I've ever played. Where the first hour or two, I was struggling to figure out how the hell to do this. I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until I found out how you, as Snake, you can there's this left bumper button where as you're approaching from behind an enemy from behind, you could kind of tiptoe. It's like this tiptoe mechanic where if you just go crouch and walk up behind them, they'll turn around. You have to do the tiptoe mechanic, which slows you down significantly, but you get there and you're able to grab the enemy successfully. And I also learned that if you whenever I go assassinate or grab an enemy from behind in a stealth game, I'm always pressing forward throughout the entire prompt and button press. In this game, if you do that, you'll do like a slam move where you'll slam them down onto the ground really loudly, and other nearby enemies will will hear that and fire on you immediately. Here, that's what happens when you press forward as you're doing the prompt. What you have to do is, as you're sneaking up using the tiptoe, you have to stop moving the stick completely and then press the prompt, and then Snake grabs them quietly, and then you have a couple options. If you want to interrogate them, you can move them behind like cover away from enemy sight lines and kill them, knock them out, do whatever you want. But it wasn't until I figured out how to do that where I was like, okay, now I'm in business. Now I can do this and manipulate guards physically like I need to in a stealth game like this. Yeah, I loved that the kind of the pistol. I know there's like a tranquilizer gun, but there's also an actual pistol with a silencer, and that silencer has a limited meter on it where it will break if you use it too many times. So the game encourages you to kind of preserve that a little bit and don't just shoot every enemy in the head. You do want to sneak up on enemies and take them out quietly if you can. And I talked about Assassin's Creed. It's impossible to really know the position of every enemy around you. That's definitely the case in Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, where the game gives you some tools. There's like a couple like radar ping tools or audio type of tools where it gives you an audio beep based on where enemies are if they're in your range. But you really can't know, and you really just have to take it extremely slow. Trying to play this game in stealth successfully in Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater in the fast lane is going to get you nowhere. Okay, you have to be very, very slow around every corner. You want to brush up against every corner and peek around first before you just go. Like, you do not know the enemy positions accurately. Some of those tools that I just mentioned can be very inaccurate and very unreliable. And I think that's probably on purpose. You have to just really be very, very, very slow and methodical here. And part of that is getting down on the ground and getting dirty. Okay? This game has an incredible camo system. I've never seen anything like it in a stealth game. It's probably in the other Metal Gears for sure, I would imagine. But you can get on the ground and you can there's this quick optimize button where you could quickly put on the best camo and face paint for the environment that you're currently existing in. And there's a percentage system too. So you want, the higher the percentage, the more blended in you are. You want to be like 90-95%. And I just love getting down into the dirt, on the ground, in some grass, or maybe even out in the open, getting down, putting on the best camo, getting that 90-95% camo, and being able to just lay there in the open with an enemy staring at me from like 15 feet away as I'm staying still. And it's like there's a huge range. There's a very, you could get pretty close. You could crawl around on the ground and they won't notice you if you have that high enough camo percentage. They won't notice you. And so you can get as close as you want for the most part, and you can just sit there and aim your pistol at their head and kind of take them out from the ground. And oh my God, I just loved, and in going indoors too, a little tougher indoors, though. That's tougher to do because there's not many bushes, and the game there's like a disguise that you get later in the game that you use for indoor areas. But man, like the stealth in this game and it is just phenomenal. Once I really got the hang of it and I knew what I was doing, oh man, I remember going into Grozny Grad, which is like the game's giant base, and being able to stealth through some of those areas without any problems, without ever being caught. There's this one part in like this kind of hangar where you have to plant 4 explosives on some generators or whatever, and I did it, and that was an indoor area too, without ever getting caught. And it was phenomenal. I love the stealth in this game so much. I also love how the structure of this game, in terms of, it's like kind of, it's a weird structure. I don't think I've ever really encountered anything like it, where it's a linear game, but it's laid out in like kind of sections. And each section, it feels like, has a kind of special type of layout, a unique layout that provides a unique type of challenge to you. Like there's this one where kind of early on in the game, you you enter this section, and I love every time you transition from section to section, it zooms you out and on like a fixed camera, and you go through. I like that about it, and it really does a good job like really partitioning these areas. And they're very, very small areas. None of these areas are that big at all. They're all very, very small, but each of them is laid out uniquely to provide a certain type of challenge. So like one of these is kind of like this kind of water lake with trees. This one lane in water, and there are these enemy drones flying above with lights looking down the water, and you have to kind of dive down and avoid the light by going underwater and swimming. There's this other one where it's in this small building with this kind of large staircase, this spiral staircase with enemies on each of the levels, and that challenges. Now you have to deal with the staircase and the kind of the geometry of that as you try and stealth through and take out guards and make sure you're not seen on this staircase. And I just like that each of these areas was very, very small, but has its own challenge. And there's some of them with, here are kind of guard dogs, and here's a mine area with a bunch of mines laid out that you have to really be careful traversing. And I just love the structure of this game. It's really brilliant. But yeah, the story here is absolutely fucking bananas. I don't think I've ever seen a AAA video game do whatever the fuck this is in a narrative, in cutscenes before. And this is why, like, Metal Gear Solid might be one of the Japanese game franchises that I never really gave the time of day to before, that now that I have, I might have fallen in love with it. Not only just for the stealth gameplay, which I just waxed poetically about. I don't even know what to say about what this narrative is and what these fucking characters... Ocelot and his gun spinning was some of the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen in a video game cutscene in my life. I don't know how to... I'm not even going to try and continue to describe what the fuck that is. Okay? I don't know how to describe that. I really loved Naked Snake and his voice. I'm not going to try and do his voice. I know I've been working on his voice. Maybe I'll go, I really like Naked Snake's voice. There you go. That's my Naked Snake. I've been trying to work on that. I love that voice. I love the voice work in these games. And there's this character named the Boss, which is kind of Naked Snake's mentor, or was his mentor in the past. And now she's here, and she's kind of... There's a lot of double crossing in this story, and who the fuck side is anybody on? It's a big mystery. But the Boss, she becomes kind of like one of the main antagonists of the game to Naked Snake. And they have history together, and I just loved the Boss's voice and how it's delivered in this. She kind of... There's something about it that's kind of strange and ethereal. I don't know how else to describe it. It's almost impossible to describe. But the way her kind of monologues, and the way she talks, and the way she presents certain ideas, and the way she talks to Snake is... I don't know how to describe it. There's something about it that's like... that hit me a little bit. Like, that voice work is incredible. Yeah, and I feel like there's one moment also, there's the music in this game, this game has its own distinct theme song, which is incredible, and it plays at the beginning of the game like a lot of Japanese franchises. You have like the kind of intro opening with the music and the theme song, and this game has that. But that song also shows up in a moment midway through the game where Snake needs to... There's this kind of mountaintop region that Snake needs to reach. And instead of just cutting to him arriving there, the game makes you climb what seems like an infinite ladder for like a solid... I think it's like 4 or 5 minutes, just climbing up this ladder forever. And the entire theme song of the game starts to creep in, and it plays the entire theme song, and then you reach the top for like 4 minutes. It's wild. I talked about Ludo and the surrealist elements in Ludo, and some of the surrealist elements in Lost Records. Man, oh man, the surrealism. This game is so weird in the best ways. That moment right there, I sat back in my chair and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, this is so fucking cool. This game is just fucking cool. Okay, period. It's just fucking cool. And the kind of last leg of the game is just basically all action. It's just an entire action movie where it's just you're in this motorcycle sidecar with this character named Eva, and there's, romantic undertones between them throughout the game at several points. These two characters kind of falling in love almost, or will they, won't they kind of thing. I think they do at some point. And they're just in this sidecar fighting this whole base of enemies and fighting this tank and oh my god, this game. And then the final standoff with Snake and the boss and that field of flowers is. I liked how each boss fight in this game did something totally different than the next. All right, you have there's this sniper boss, which is kind of the most controversial part of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, where that fight could take like an hour because this sniper character you have to actually track him down and he fires at you and it's just kind of cat and mouse game. I don't know how I actually managed to beat that boss. Looking back on it, I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know how I figured it out, but it's a tough boss fight. And what I love about this game, there's a moment early in the game with that character, this kind of old guy in a wheelchair with this eye that pops out of his skull, and he's the sniper character of the kind of antagonist group. This kind of several group of enemies, of villains. There's a moment early in the game where he's sitting on a dock, and you could just end his life right there if you really wanted to. You have a sniper rifle at that point in the game. You could just end his life right there, and you won't have to do his boss fight later on in the game. I love that. I love shit like that in games. I didn't do it. I had the opportunity. I thought to myself, this is my first time playing the game, so I don't know this for sure, but I thought to myself, I'm probably going to have to fight that guy that's sitting there right now. He's one of the main villains. I'm probably going to have to fight him in a boss fight. And I have my sniper out, and I have him in my scope. If I shoot him in the head right now, and I didn't try it, and I regret not trying it because I didn't want to fuck up my game save or do something that I didn't want to happen, But when I play through the game again in the future, I'll definitely do that or I might not. I might want to try and figure out how you really do that boss fight because I don't know. I don't remember how I did it. But each boss fight has something unique to it. The Ocelite fight early on in the game is this Western style thing. It's so cool. This game is just fucking cool. It's some of the best stealth I might have ever experienced in a video game. It's my number 5. It's in my top 5. So shout out Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Let me move on now to my number 4. And before I do, just a quick note here. Moving forward for the rest of this list, we're going to get into the top 4 here. Every single one of these top 4 games could have been my game of the year. When I started this video, I said that this is the most excruciatingly challenging list I've ever made. It's because of these top 4 games right here. I did not know what to do with them. I did not know how to order them. I had them in all kinds of different orders, and all of them would probably be valid in my mind, but this is the one that I came up with. So just keep in mind, every single one of these next 4 games, well, these next 3 games, because one of them is my game of the year, but every one of these next 3 games could have been my number 1 game of the year. This was insane. It took me days and days just on these 4 games to figure out the order. My number 4 is Rematch. I don't care about soccer. I never have, and I might not ever care about soccer or football, as it's known across the world. I don't care. And despite that, perhaps my favorite sports game of all time now is a soccer video game. Rematch stole my life for the entire summer of 2025. I could not get enough. I could not break away. I was addicted to this game. It is the most addicted I might have ever been to a sports game in my life. It's fucking incredible. I could not stop playing Rematch. It's a third-person soccer game, so, everybody knows FIFA. It's a top-down kind of isometric view of the field. Rematch does away with that. Screw that. We're going third-person. You get to control your character freely, and the ball is not magnetized like it is in FIFA. It's a loose ball. It's a loose ball. Obviously, when you're running with it, it's kind of connected to you, and you kind of dribble it out automatically, or you could do different dribble moves yourself. But when you're passing the ball to somebody else, it doesn't go to them automatically. They have to position themselves to kind of get to it. Or you could kind of mess up and pass it a little behind them, or like it's not going to magnetize to them like it does in FIFA. And so passing is really fun in this game. Firing the ball at the goal is really fun in this game. I loved playing goalie. I probably have about, I don't know, there's stats in this game. There's a stat page. I think I might have like an obscene amount of hours that I've spent as goalie. Maybe 8 hours, 10 hours just as the goalie. And this game has 3 different modes. There's 3v3, 4v4, and 5v5. 5v5 being like the ultimate version, like the quintessential Rematch experience. But 3v3 is kind of like where I started out, and where most players probably will start out. And that's the one where if you want goalie practice, you got to get in the 3v3. Despite it being like a crapshoot, people just get in there to fuck around. Like you'll get goalie most of the time because there's only 3 players cycling. As opposed to 5 where you might not get goalie in several matches, depending on how it cycles you through the positions. But I just could not get enough of this game. I loved playing goalie and positioning myself correctly where there's like this kind of triangle system in relation to where the ball is, where you have to be, kind of shifting over a little bit, or how forward do I play? I start off playing right on the goal line, which is probably not what you want to do, because you have you're giving away more space. If you play up towards where the player with the ball is, you're closing the kind of edges of the goal around you, and you're closing that space a little bit, so they have to really try and get it around you. The diving mechanic, this game just feels so smooth. And as a goalie, diving through the air to grab a ball, it just feels so satisfying to do that. And on the other side of the ball, when I'm attacking the goal, there are different types of shots that you could do. There's so many. You could curve it in. There's like the full wind-up shot, which is like the right trigger. You hold it and then you release it. But you could also just pass the ball into the goal. You could just tap it into the goal if you're close and try and throw off. I love trying to throw the goalie off, where, when you're pressing the trigger to fully shoot the ball, it takes a while and that ball flies in 100 miles an hour. But what you could do is you could just tap the right trigger and it'll just float in instead of like this line drive. It'll just float in. And what I would do sometimes, and this worked a couple times, where instead of just firing off the shot where 99% of the goalies know that cadence and how fast and when that shot's going to get there, throwing them off and just doing a light tap, it flies through the air a lot slower, but it throws the timing off of the goalie, and I love doing that and getting a goal off of that. It's so much fun. And then you could kind of aim it. What I do sometimes is I do a full power swing of the leg, but a ground ball, a completely rolled ball, full speed, just a complete grounder, and they'd fly up into the air and they'd miss it and it would go right under them. Or just like tapping in with like a pass or something like that. I love Rematch. I love positioning, and tracking the ball and anticipating where it's going to be when somebody passes it to you, to get there as quick as possible, to be as fast as possible and efficient as possible before the enemy team, the opposing team, kind of can catch up to you. I loved, deciding to hang back because all 3 of my teammates are up ahead and trying to score at the ball. I should hang back in my zone as like a defender in case something happens and they send it down the other way. I could be there and give my goalie some help. Just the different scenarios, the way each match plays out can be completely different than the next, and that's the element that kept me addicted to this game through the whole summer. Rematch could have easily been my game of the year, but I mean, what else more do I have to say? I love the customization. I love the different outfits that you could unlock. Yeah, I just could not I couldn't get enough of this game. What more do I have to say? Everything is on screen. It's a simple game of get the ball in the opposing team's net. But there's so many, and the controls are it took a while to get used to the controls because they're very peculiar. But once I did, like, run is left bumper, but once I did, like, oh man, like I was, and I know it's one thing to watch this game and it's another thing to actually play it and have the control in your hands. And it's like, oh my God, Rematch is incredible. But I should move on now to my top 3. My number 3 of 2025 is...
Could you really be in this town?
Silent Hill 2. I know I talked about Silent Hill F earlier in this video, and both of these games make history for me, as it's the first time ever that 2 games from a single franchise have made my top 10 games list. Never been done before. I've been doing these lists for 10 years now. My first one was 2015. I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's never happened before. Congratulations to the Silent Hill franchise and Konami for having 2 games from the same franchise in the same year. Now, you may be wondering, hey, Silent Hill 2 is a 2024 game. You'd be correct, because it did initially come out in 2024, but it came to Xbox this year, and so it's eligible in my book. And so I played it kind of last minute in November. It came out in November, and I played it, and I'm glad I did, because Silent Hill 2 blew me away. First of all, I'll say that in comparison to Silent Hill F, I played Silent Hill 2 before I played Silent Hill F, by the way, just for the record. In comparison to Silent Hill F, Silent Hill 2 is a little bit less linear. Silent Hill 2 has 4 distinct areas: the apartment buildings, the hospital, the prison, to a smaller extent, and the hotel at the end of the game, where this game's level design and exploration clicked with me on a high level. This is a Resident Evil type of experience, these Silent Hill games, and Silent Hill 2 has the closest things to the Resident Evil 2 police station that I've experienced since experiencing Resident Evil 2 in 2019, the remake. Those 4 areas that I just described, the apartment buildings, really the hospital is when it's really clicked. Like, I love in these games. And I know there are differences between Silent Hill and Resident Evil. The key one being in Silent Hill 2, there's no inventory system. And Silent Hill 2 does have a little bit more of a melee focus than the Resident Evil games do. Because, you have a persistent melee weapon that never breaks, and you could use it on some of the less threatening enemies and conserve on your ammo a little bit, which I like the strategy of that. Like, there's not the kind of when do I run around this enemy, because I feel like in Silent Hill 2 you have to fight and kill every enemy that you encounter. For the most part, there are some sequences where you're running away during like a storm and you have to just get out of there. Resident Evil games, most of the time, it's like you kind of decide, should I just move past this enemy? But I like deciding in Silent Hill 2 whether I should just use my melee, or if, oh man, there's 2 enemies coming at me at once, maybe I need to pull out the pistol or the shotgun and take care of this quickly before I get overrun. But yeah, like I said, the The level design and exploration in this game is phenomenal, and these 4 areas that I described, there's nothing like them in Silent Hill F. There's a little bit of that element in the schoolhouse in Silent Hill F, but there's nothing on the scale of the hospital or the hotel in Silent Hill 2 in terms of having that floor plan. Here's floor 1, here's floor 2, here's floor 3, here's the basement, and going through and systematically checking every room and every door and exploring that, finding healing items, finding interesting notes, fighting enemies. That is what it's all about. I loved that. To the point where I did admittedly feel a little disappointed when I had to leave the hospital. And it's like, okay, now I'm kind of back out in the streets of the town where things feel a little bit more open, but I just want to get to that next building type of environment, the next floor plan. I want to get to the next thing, which at that point was the prison. And there's a long stretch of game between the hospital and the prison. But then after the prison, you get the hotel. The prison is like a pretty small version of, it's probably out of those 4, I'd say the apartments and the prison are the smallest of them. The hospital and the hotel, which is the near the end of the game, are like the larger ones, and I just love those locations in this game. It's phenomenal, and I loved, early on in the game, before you get to the apartments, you're just in the streets of Silent Hill, and it's foggy and you could barely see anything. And I loved just being on the streets, and there was a little bit of that element of, maybe, there's one of the enemies across the street that I could see, but I could just kind of continue over here and just keep an eye on them and move past them. So there is that kind of Resident Evil element in that early moment, but throughout the rest of the game, you're rarely in scenarios like that. You have to fight your way out of every situation, every enemy for the rest of the game. But early on, I like that kind of, should I not? I'll just move past, And I did use the radio in here, so when you get when an enemy gets close to you, you hear the static on the radio. I thought that was incredible. Not only as a way to know where there's an enemy around you, but also in terms of the game's atmosphere, hearing that static. And man, there are times where you're in a really hairy area, and you hear that static going off the charts, and you can't see anything in front of you, and that's fucking scary. Like I said with Silent Hill F, these Silent Hill games are really, really fucking scary. And the tone of them is so much more dark and serious and sinister than the Resident Evil games, in my opinion. I loved Silent Hill 2's story. It's very kind of ambiguous. It's very, is this person real? I loved meeting, is it Marie or Maria? Meeting her on the gazebo on the dock. I forgot which exactly. There's Mary and there's Maria, and I can't remember. I think it's Mary. I don't know. But meeting her and her coming along with you and kind of losing her in the hospital, so to speak. That moment was hit me pretty hard because she's just kind of tagging along, and James at first is very standoffish with her because she kind of is like a representation of his wife, his deceased wife, who he's trying to find in this town, and he doesn't want really anything to do with her. And I just like how when she leaves us in that way, he's still devastated. And she pops up again later on, and it's that thing of like, is this character real? There are other characters, there 2 other characters or 3 other characters in this game that keep recurring, that keep showing up throughout the narrative. There's Jimmy, I think his name is, and there's Laura, who's and they each have their own problems and issues that they're dealing with and they're being angry about, and oh my God. Oh no, Angela, not Laura's. I think the little girl. Angela is the other one with like the knife. You find her with a knife, and she's like kind of suicidal, I think. And then her send off later in the game, near the end of the game, up the staircase of fire. I just think, oh my God, this game Oh, Resident Evil doesn't do anything like that. Resident Evil does not for the most part, doesn't do the surrealism like Silent Hill does. Silent Hill does that. And you're constantly questioning, are these characters real? What is reality? Right? Are these events that are actually unfolding in reality? I don't know. Like, I love that about Silent Hill, and I loved it about Silent Hill 2, and I loved the setting of this small town so much, and the little movie theater, and the strip club that Mary or Maria brings you to, and the little motel, and oh my God, those areas in between those four major locations are all also really just interesting, visually interesting to explore. And the combat in this game is great. I don't remember if I felt kind of scrounging for resources and ammo. I feel like the game gives you a ton of ammo. So I don't remember. I don't think that was really like an issue, if I remember correctly. But speaking of the prison area is probably the scariest in the entire game. That's where it introduces the enemies that are able to crawl on the walls and the ceilings. In pitch blackness, you can't hear anything. All you hear is the static on the radio, but you can't tell exactly where they are. And then you just have to dodge for your life. The puzzles in this game are really well done as well. I like puzzles in these kinds of games, in these Resident Evil style games, and the puzzles in here were great as well. And like I said, the areas like the hospital, finding this key, oh, this door's locked, I need to find that key, and this thing, and the elevator, and man, I just love that. I love Silent Hill 2. Easily one of the best games of the year. Could have been my game of the year pretty easily as well. But let me move on now to number 2. Another game that could have damn well been my game of the year, but just fell a little short. My number 2 is Wuchang Fallen Feathers. This is a Souls game. It is likely, I know Elden Ring I hold up as like the greatest of all time in terms of Souls games. It was my game of the year in 2022, and in terms of Souls games, nothing's ever really come close to that. But Wuchang is likely one of the best non-From Software Souls-like games that I've ever played. Next to Lies of P. I remember Lies of P, loving that game in 2023. Wuchang is right up with Lies of P as like the best non-From Software Souls games ever. And it's a Chinese game, my Chinese developers, set in kind of a mythical China. And I'll talk about the story and then I'll talk about the gameplay. I'll say this about the story. The story's disappointing. The characters aren't memorable. I didn't really care that much about the world or the events that are unfolding in it, or the lore. I just really did not care. I know a lot of it is based off of Chinese mythology, but it just didn't grip me. It didn't grab me in a meaningful way. And that is, I feel like, this game's biggest weakness. And one of the main reasons why it didn't get my number 1 is because of the story and the narrative and just not really doing much for me. The reason why it's number 2 is that gameplay, the exploration, the level design, the combat, the boss fights, the sense of accomplishment that I had from beating some of these bosses. And I'll say this, later in the game, I struggled with a lot of bosses in this game, as one should. And some of these bosses took a long time for me to finally defeat. But there were a number of bosses in a row in the late game, towards the very end of this game, that I just walked all over. Okay? All over. This game, the boss fights in this game can be very inconsistent. Some of the early ones can be extremely easy. Some of them partway through the game can be really, 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 really difficult. I think the hardest boss in this game takes place about midway through. Hardest boss in the entire game. But some of these late game bosses, I shit on them. I shit on them all in 2 or 3 attempts max. And it felt unbelievable. Just walking, having my way with all of these bosses. Really, I made them look silly. Foolish. Okay? The sense of accomplishment that came from beating some of the hardest bosses in the game was incredible, but the sense of just my giant ball sack of just beating some of these late game bosses in 1 or 2 tries, unfucking real. And I don't know if that's because the game isn't balanced well. I don't care. I hope they don't fix it. I hope it stays exactly as is, because that's an incredible feeling. That, and pairing that with the sense of accomplishment, like, oh my god, these boss fights, beating them made me feel amazing. And moment to moment outside the boss fights in the regular levels, I absolutely loved the level design in this game. It is intricate. In one area in particular, Zhenwu Temple, it is very dense in that area, and there's enemies hiding around every turn, and there's things to find and read, and shortcuts and secret pathways to explore. And oh my god, this game provided that sense of, okay, I'm here, and it's a linear game. It's not an open world or anything like Elden Ring, but it's a linear game, but there are so many different pathways that you could take. And I love, coming to an area where there are like 3 or 4 different paths and being like, man, I'm going to put a pin in that area. I'm going to come back later, fast travel back to this kind of bonfire thing. I forgot what they're called in this game. I'm going to fast travel back here later. I'm going to explore that path, and I'm going to explore that path, and I'm going to get to explore all these paths eventually. And coming back and doing the shortcuts and loop arounds, and that sense of like, oh man, I'm excited. This is an area that excites me because there's so many places to explore. And the Cloud, I forgot what the snowy area is called. Cloud Spire, I think. Cloud Spire, the snowy area, and then Zhenwu Temple later on. I really liked how, these Souls games often have gear that lets you brave different types of ailments and elements. So in the Cloud Spire area, the snowy area, it's freezing cold. And if you go in there, you're going to start building up frost damage. And there's a frost meter on you that'll fill up slowly. And what you have to do is you have to find the gear that you have that has the best frost resistance that'll let you explore those areas and mitigate that frost meter. So it won't completely negate it, although there might be some gear that might negate it fully. It'll slow it down significantly so you could explore the areas at your own pace again. You're not rushed. And there are other types of damage, like certain caves and caverns that have this purple mist type of damage that I think it's called corruption, where you put on the corruption gear, and that'll let you go through there safely. And I just loved mixing up, switching up my gear to, because in these Souls games, you never know what types of enemies you're going to come across that have different types of damage. And so it's silly. I never really had the connection in these Souls games. So I'm going to equip, anti-fire equipment just because I might come across. No, like I never liked that. But in Wuchang, I have the anti-fire equipment in case I'm in a boss fight that is flinging fire at me all the time. Then you can put on the anti-fire gear, and you'll have a better chance. And you feel that better chance. Like I was getting destroyed and melted. Now I have the right gear on. Now I'm making my way through that. In Souls games, I prefer a dodge roll. Wuchang does not have a dodge roll. However, it's a simple dodge. However, I think this is the best implementation of a standing dodge in a Souls game. Okay, I loved how this felt, and I think that's mainly because of the mechanic of perfect dodging in this game gives you these kind of feather charges on your arm, on Wuchang's arm, and you could see it in the lower left corner where she dodges perfectly and she gets these charges that she could then use for special types of attacks or spells. And I loved, you know, if you have one of these charges on you and you go to do a heavy attack, I loved using the longsword, specifically the lashing whip, which gives you extra range, right? What happens is if you go and I love doing heavy attacks in this game. When you go to do a heavy attack with one of these charges, it speeds up the heavy attack wind up. So you do it really quick. And so what happens is a lot of the time when I'm facing like humanoid bosses or human or enemies, I like to dodge behind them. And when I have these charges on me, which that dodge usually gives, you dodge behind them, and then you do a really quick heavy attack on their back, and you get them staggered. Oh my god, I love doing that. Some of these bosses you can't really do that with because they're not humanoid, but doing that on the human bosses and getting that damage in that way. Oh my god, I love the kind of feather system in this game where you're doing perfect dodges to try and build up those charges, so you have more to play with in terms of different spells you could do, and having that quick heavy attack charge on you is really helpful. So yeah, despite this game's lackluster storytelling, I absolutely just fell in love with exploring, and this game's level design is absolutely phenomenal. So shout out to Wuchang Fallen Feathers for being almost my game of the year. And speaking of, I think it's time to move on to my number one game of the year, which is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That is right. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 takes the cake in 2025 and is my number one game of the year. Where do I even begin with Clair Obscur? I feel like I'd split it up into story and then combat and gameplay. I'll say that Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I just talked about two games prior, Wuchang and Silent Hill 2, that had unbelievably excellent exploration and level design. I feel like Clair Obscur doesn't have as strong of exploration or level design. Very well designed in its levels, but still not Wuchang or Silent Hill 2 levels of exploration and design. Nevertheless, its narrative blows the other two out of the water. I think this is the best narrative of the year. I think that what it does later in the game, and this is major spoiler territory, where it reveals that the world that you've come to know, that you've been exploring and battling in and crying and fighting in and living in, isn't real. Yes, it tells the reveal of this is all just a painting that we've been living in this entire time blew my mind. It recontextualizes everything that I've experienced in the world at that point, up to that point. Completely shifts everything. And I loved that the cutscenes in this game. I'll say this. Past the midway point in this game, almost every single cutscene had my jaw on the ground. Almost all of them, past the midway point. I could not believe I was just sitting there and this stuff was happening, entering my eyeballs and my eardrums, and I was just sitting there and I couldn't believe the things that I was seeing, the things that I was hearing from these characters' mouths, revealing things about the world, revealing things about themselves. These characters are some of the best, definitely some of the best this year. Verso is probably my favorite character in this game. And let me tell you something about Verso. I loved the two sides of him. He's very serious and he's depressed. This is a man who is depressed. He's beaten down. He he wants something that he's trying to work towards, but it's not working out. It hasn't been working out for him. At the same time, he has such a lighter side to him where he's joking around with his friend Monoko. He's joking around with Eskia, and I just love how this crew kind of busts each other's balls sometimes. And I loved his relationship with Mael, who's like the youngest of the crew, and this story really is about Verso and Mael at the end of the day, and you learn that. And later in the game, it really does become about, this is Verso and Mael's story. But you learn that Verso, that reveal that I just mentioned about how this world is just a painting, and there's a world outside of it where some of these characters are from, and this is just a canvas that was made for. You learn that every character, with the exception of Verso, Mael, Renoir, and the Paintress, everybody else is a creation. They're not actually real. They're just paint. And that includes Verso, who is a creation made by the Paintress, who represents for her son who died in a fire in the real world, in the family's mansion or whatever. And when I learned that about Verso, it completely changed. It made Verso feel kind of like Woody in Toy Story, if that makes sense, where he's not human. He's just like he's just paint. You know what I mean? But he's still so lifelike. He is real. I think that's the thing that this game's narrative creates. And I think this is maybe a little play on simulation theory, where we learn that this canvas, this world is just a painting, and it's not real. None of these are all characters are just creations. However, aren't they real? Because they're feeling these things. They have real feelings. They are still real in some way. And that was such a fascinating thing to learn about this world and about Verso. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I loved how Verso and the kind of, Verso and Mael, who turns out to be somebody else. I'm forgetting some of these names, but like they start to become at odds because Mael wants to stay in this world. Verso is working to end this world because it's not healthy for the Paintress and Mael to exist in this world, because they'll die at some point. They'll lose their mind, I think is what the situation is. So he's trying to get Verso's trying to get the world to end, the painted world to end, so that the Paintress and Mael can go free. And I love the endings of this game. And I had the ending where Mael kind of traps Verso in the world and forces him to like entertain everybody, and she brings Gustav back, who's an early character in the game who gets a unfortunate demise. But like she brings him back, and she traps Verso in the world. And I forgot what the other ending is, but I think I looked it up afterwards, or I might have reloaded and played it. I don't know, but I remember seeing it, and it's the opposite. The world ends, and Monoko and Eskia and Luna and Ciel, all the non-human characters that were just paintings the whole time, they perish, they vanish, and the real life family in the real world lives on. And this is just a beautiful game. The music, oh my, I don't even have to, what am I even going to say about the music? The music and how they are incorporated into these boss fights are just something else entirely. This game is the epitome of epic. Capital E, epic. I mean, how do I even describe it? I think you have to like play it yourself to really get the grasp of how special this game is and how epic these moments and boss fights are. I think the moment that did it for me, that really made me think, this is blowing my mind, is shortly after we meet Verso and he becomes part of the crew. We go to this kind of battlefield, trenches, kind of graveyard area. I forgot what it's called. and you cross a bridge eventually at the end of it, and everybody falls into this ditch because the bridge collapses, and you fight this giant being, this kind of ninja that has these two blades. One of them's like purple or orange or something, but you fight this ninja, and the music is blaring. Characters are doing crazy things. There's like, it's doing the thing where it's like doing like a cinematic flair to it, where characters are doing things outside the combat that they don't typically do in a cinematic way. They're doing that, and you're parrying all these attacks in a row. And I'm going to get to the combat. Hold your horses. But like, you're parrying, and oh my God, the music's going, and it's that moment right there. That fight solidified this as like, holy shit, this is special, and I'm in for a fucking ride. It's like an early game, kind of almost midway through there. But yeah, the combat. This is a turn-based combat game, and last year's Game of the Year winner for me was Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, another turn-based game, and I think this is probably my favorite turn-based combat system ever. And I haven't really played too many turn-based games. I'm trying to play more, but this is probably my favorite. The way that each character has their own unique systems, their own types of resources. Luna has her kind of stains, their elemental charges almost, that certain attacks will give her these charges to use in other attacks moving forward, and how you can combine them. And Mayel has her different stances, her defensive and offensive stances, and then her virtuous stance, I think it's called, is like her super powerful one. And there are different moves that leave her in different stances, and strategizing which moves to use when. And Verso has the whole rank system where he starts at D or E or something like that, and each attack he grows rank and can unleash more powerful rank attacks. And then Ciel, which might be one of my favorites, this kind of sun and moon card system, and she can use a certain number of cards, and certain attacks give her more or less resources. And it's all tough to explain. It's a lot to explain, but I just really, it was so much fun learning each character's different thing, different combat mechanic. And they're all different. They're all unique from one another, and mixing and matching different moves from each character's skill trees. And let me try that. Let me do this one, or swap things out. I will tell you this: I was constantly switching different things out, trying different weapons with different effects and different abilities, trying different moves. Constantly, always, there are these things called Pictos, which are different like buff things that you could have in your build. Constantly switching things out, moving things around. I loved experimenting in this game with the Pictos and each character's different moves to bring into battle. And I was constantly rotating through these characters. Like, I rarely ever rolled with the same characters throughout the entire. I think maybe I did. I think Luna sat on the bench a little more than other characters. I think I used Mayel, I used Verso, and I used Ciel most of the time. But I still got Luna and Monoko in there constantly, all the time, just constantly switching out and trying new things. I just love that about this game. And it's just getting into such a flow in the turn-based combat system of, oh man, this is just flowing well, and I know what I want to do, and I'm have this strategy and this plan that I want to get. I want to try and get Verso to rank S so he could do this, and then Mayel has different fire attacks that I want to use, and I want to set the enemies on fire using that attack. And the timing of them doing the button presses during the attack is so much fun. And oh my God, there's not enough great things to say. Great things I could say about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It's a special game. It's a game that blew my mind narratively, from a narrative perspective, from the characters, and the way it's revealed, and the motivations of different characters, what different characters want, the bonds between these characters. In an RPG like this, oh my God, going to the camp and talking to every character and learning more about them and seeing the bonds grow, the camaraderie, and the kind of differences and frustrations that some of them have with each other, especially Mael early on, right? Losing Gustav, right? And now Verso comes into the fray, and Mael and Verso are at odds at the beginning, but then they learn more about each other. Wait a minute, are we like related in this? Like, what's going on? And then they kind of grow a little closer in that regard. And this turn-based combat is probably my favorite combat of the year, which is crazy to say, having just spoken about Wuchang and everything. But so Clair Obscur Expedition 33. What else more is there to say about that, with that fucking music and the boss fights and everything? Just an epic game. But that does it. That is my game of the year. And that does it for my top 10 games of 2025. Big shout out to all of these developers, very, very talented developers that created my 10 favorite games of the year. Thank you. Compulsion Games, Neobards Entertainment, Broken Bird Games, Hangar 13 Games, Dogubomb, Konami, Slow Clap, Bloober Team, Lean Z Games, and Sandfall Interactive for making my 10 favorite games of 2025. Here's to the future. Really excited to see what some of these studios do next. But yeah, thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me ramble on about these 10 games. But yeah, this is my favorite video to do every year in and year out. And so I'll see you again down the road. Until next time, see you later. Goodbye.